the grave significance of Cosette's silence. He merely noticed that she had grown sad, and he grew gloomy. On his side and on hers, inexperience had joined issue. Once he made a trial. He asked Cosette, "Would you like to come to the Luxembourg?" A ray illuminated Cosette's pale face. "Yes," said she. They went thither. 3 months had elapsed. Marius no longer went there. Marius was not there. On the following day, Jean Valjean asked Cosette again, "Would you like to come to the Luxembourg?" She replied, sadly and gently, "No." Jean Valjean was hurt by this sadness, and heartbroken at this gentleness. What was going on in that mind which was so young and yet already so impenetrable? What was on its way there within? What was taking place in Cosette's soul? Sometimes, instead of going to bed, Jean Valjean remained seated on his pallet, with his head in his hands, and he passed whole nights asking himself, "What has Cosette in her mind?" and in thinking of the things that she might be thinking about. Oh, at such moments, what mournful glances did he cast towards that cloister, that chaste peak, that abode of angels, that inaccessible glacier of virtue! How he contemplated with despairing ecstasy that convent garden, full of ignored flowers and cloistered virgins, where all perfumes and souls mount straight to heaven. How he adored that Eden forever closed against him, whence he had voluntarily and madly emerged. How he regretted his abnegation and his folly in having brought Cosette back into the world, poor hero of sacrifice, seized and hurled to the earth by his very self-devotion. How he said to himself, "What have I done?" However, nothing of all this was perceptible to Cosette. No ill temper, no harshness. His face was always serene and kind. Jean Valjean's manners were more tender and more paternal than ever. If anything could have betrayed his lack of joy, it was his increased suavity. On her side, Cosette languished. She suffered from the absence of Marius, as she had rejoiced in his presence, peculiarly without exactly being conscious of it. When Jean Valjean ceased to take her on their customary strolls, a feminine instinct murmured confusedly at the bottom of her heart that she must not seem to set store on the Luxembourg garden, and that if this proved to be a matter of indifference to her, her father would take her thither once more. But days, weeks, months elapsed. Jean Valjean had tacitly accepted Cosette's tacit consent. She regretted it. It was too late. So Marius had disappeared. All was over. The day on which she returned to the Luxembourg, Marius was no longer there. What was to be done? Should she ever find him again? She felt an anguish at her heart which nothing relieved, and which augmented every day. She no longer knew whether it was winter or summer, whether it was raining or shining, whether the birds were singing, whether it was the season for dahlias or daisies, whether the Luxembourg was now more charming than the Tuileries, whether the linen which the laundress brought home was starched too much or not enough, whether Toussaint had done her marketing well or ill. And she remained dejected, absorbed, attentive to but a single thought, her eyes vague and staring, as when one gazes by night at a black and fathomless spot where an apparition has vanished. However, she did not allow Jean Valjean to perceive anything of this, except her pallor. She still wore her sweet face for him. The pallor sufficed, but too thoroughly, to trouble Jean Valjean. Sometimes he asked her, "What is the matter with you?" She replied, "There is nothing the matter with me." And after a silence, when she divined that he was sad also, she would add, "And you, father, is there anything wrong with you?" "With me? Nothing," said he. These two beings, who had loved each other so exclusively and with so touching an affection, and who had lived so long for each other, now suffered side by side, each on the other's account, without acknowledging it to each other, without anger toward each other, and with a smile. End of Book 3, Chapter 7. Recording by Dave Dwight, Southern Illinois.